Dr. Lal, if I could invite you to come to the come present your presentation, and I understand you'd like to take it from the floor. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I requested him that I'll stand here because I cannot see the slides from sitting on the screen. I was asked to talk about carbon sequestration. I'm going to begin with defining what carbon sequestration means. It's a process of transferring carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into the soil of a land unit. I think that part underlined is very important. A land unit, plants are growing into it, and the biomass produced by the plants within that land unit, it will apply to the same land. So if I bring plant material from outside the land unit into that one, such as biochar, or mulch, or compost, it is not a sequestration in that soil. It's a robbing another soil to put it in there and calling it sequestration. And that part has led to a lot of confusion. So please understand that the application of the biomass produced within a land to the same land, otherwise it's not a sequestration, otherwise it's a redistribution. And that's a big major confusion. So according to this definition, land application of carbon-rich amendments such as biochar, compost, manure, mulch, produced from somewhere else is not sequestration. I think that was the part I wanted to understand. The second part, when you want to sequester carbon, it is not possible to do so without considering water, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and several other micronutrients. They go together. It's not possible to consider carbon as the only element. And when you consider these together, manage them jointly, they together create several ecosystem services, such as food production, such as water quality, such as biodiversity, such as restoration of the land. And that's the idea. We call them co-benefits of carbon sequestration. So it's a together of this. Now the way the process happens is, supposing on the y-axis I have plotted carbon pool of a soil, on the x-axis I have plotted time. When I convert a natural vegetation into agricultural ecosystem, the carbon pool of the soil decreases because of the conversion. The amount of biomass which is being applied to the soil under a managed system is lower than it was under a natural system. In case of the Midwestern United States, it takes about 50 years to the carbon in the soil to come to the 50% of the original. And it continues declining if there is a soil erosion. If there is no erosion, it reaches a constant level. At this point, if I adopt improved management system, the carbon of the soil will go up. And it reaches another equilibrium level. And this is equilibrium level after 25 or 30 years, one generation. We call it attainable potential. At this point, if I adopt another improved technology, it eventually comes to another equilibrium level, and the carbon now is equal to what I started before. At this point, perhaps there might be another improved technology. In some soil, it is possible to go beyond what the original level was. And the idea of a research is that this straight line, which is bound up, if I calculate the slope of that line over a long period of time, that tells me the rate of carbon sequestration. That's the objective of doing the long-term experiment. You cannot do this kind of work in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. You need to do this in 25-year, 50-year period. And that's the idea. Then the question is, how do you define the original level what the carbon was and to where I started from? That's called carbon sink capacity. Sometimes people say, how much carbon can you put back in the soil? That's the carbon sink capacity. and the rate of carbon sequestration, I can also define the mean residence time. And that is the pool of the carbon divided by the flux of the carbon. How long does the carbon stay in the soil? That is the mean residence time. The question is, how do you achieve this? Well, there is not one technology: conservation agriculture, biochar application, agroforestry, organic agriculture, desertification control, afforestation, pasture management, water harvesting, drip irrigation, farming system. There are many technologies. These are very site specific. When people say, believe in biochar, apply that and nothing else, you're not quite sure that statement is correct. We have 300,000 soil types in the world. To make a statement that one technology will apply to all those soils is being presumptuous, not possible. The other part is that each of these technologies has their own carbon and water footprint. There is no such thing as a free lunch. They have their own cost. And you must know what the cost is. So the gross carbon rate that I have calculated, I must correct it for the cost of carbon sequestration. That's the net rate. And most of that observation is not done properly. So this is the long-term research. For example, the center I have, I do that on a global scale, different countries. But you must do this on a long-term basis, not over a short period of time. Now, what are the technologies that create carbons? It's a balance. So idea is that the carbon going into the system by any of those practices must be more than the carbon being emitted out of the system. And the carbon being lost out of the system is by erosion, by leaching, by decomposition. Sequestration means the input exceeds the output. If the output exceeds the input, then it's a loss of carbon. Unfortunately, most of the agricultural ecosystems in India, South Asia throughout, many parts of Africa, have the second situation, where the inputs are always less than the output. And therefore you are always depleting the carbon. And many times you hear people making the statement, you can never lead to carbon sequestration. Well, it's like a bank account. If you deposit less than what you take out, you will never gain it. Therefore, unless you know what the losses from the system are, and that your gain into the system can be more than that, carbon sequestration will not happen. And I think that's a very important part to understand. The question is, how can we do sustainable intensification? The idea of sustainable intensification is produce more from less. Put more and more carbon into the land. Like yesterday I was giving an example, you take the topsoil by brick making, you take the dung for cooking, you take the mulch for feeding to the cattle, and then you expect carbon sequestration is going to happen. Not possible. You're continuously taking out of the land. That's extractive farming. Sustainable intensification means put back on the land what is required for the land to produce more. My philosophy is grains for people, residue for the land. Unless you maintain that equity between the land and the people, land will deteriorate continuously and the carbon depletion will happen. So sustainable intensification is the strategy of producing more crop from less land per drop of water, per input of fertilizer and pesticide, per input of energy, so that, and that is per unit input of carbon emission. Our agricultural ecosystems are not doing that. We are doing extensive farming, not intensive farming. Intensive means produce more and more from less and less by reducing losses and improving the efficiency of input. Now, here is an example of what the agriculture should look like. You have a plant, and this plant is an improved variety. You are going to adopt conservation agriculture. You are going to have integrated nutrient management. This plant, we should be able to talk to this plant. The plants emit molecular-based signal when it's under stress, when it's a drought stress, or it's a nitrogen stress, or being attacked by insects, or pathogen, or virus. Plant will emit signal that we can detect those signals by remote sensing. Then we can have a targeted intervention. We must apply water and nutrients directly to the roots, not just flood them and hope plants will get it, so that the losses are much less. And that is the kind of agriculture we need to have. We must have a soil biota so that the ecosystem services created by the soil become disease suppressive soil. Yesterday there was a doctor talking about soil causing diseases. A good soil should not cause a disease. A good soil, a healthy soil should suppress disease because of its microbial composition and such. So, and delivering nutrients and water directly to the plant when they are needed, and mulch farming, cover cropping, all those concepts involve the sustainable intensification of the system. Here we had an experiment in Ohio. I had my graduate student Josh. Josh is about 6 feet 8 inches tall. We had a corn field from which the crop residue was removed away. 10 feet away by the same corn, same time of planting, residue maintained. Soil temperature was cooler, soil microbial activity was very good, and you can understand the difference between plant growth. This is sustainable intensification. You cannot produce nothing out of something. You have to add something to produce something out of it. So when you say what is the climate resilient agriculture, that's one on the right side. Leave the crop residue in. Make sure you feed the land. Feed the land to feed the people. And that's an important philosophy behind it. Another part is people say, I applied mulch and nothing happened. There is a wheat straw. And I want this wheat straw to become a humus so that the carbon sequestration will happen. Think about what can be done. The wheat straw has a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 100. Humus has a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 12. Wheat straw has a carbon to phosphorus ratio of 200. Humus has 50. Carbon to sulfur ratio of 500. So the humus is enriched in nitrogen, phosphorus and sulfur. If I simply put the crop residue and there is no availability of additional nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, it will never become humus. It's an investment. You have to also supply nitrogen. So this is called humidification of the crop residue into humus, which requires additional nutrients. Then each soil has a threshold value of carbon, where it does the best performance. There's an example from Pampas in Argentina. You plot on the x-axis soil organic carbon, the y-axis yield of wheat. You find the yield keep increasing until a point when it's stable. This concentration varies from soil to soil. Normally it's 1.5 to 2%. Our soils of northwestern India, which I'm more familiar with, Haryana, Punjab, UP, Rajasthan area, is about 1.5%. Most of the soils have 0.01% right now. And then you expect the yield will go up. They cannot. We have to improve, we have to restore the soil. So determining that threshold value is important, and putting all the biomass carbon back on the land where it came from, cattle dung putting back on the land where it came from, nutrient requirements, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, making sure they are balanced is very important for carbon sequestration. We have compost from the city waste, which have its own composition. See if we can apply that one on. We have to understand what the municipal solid waste material, what its composition is, and what kind of input we require to sequester carbon. Agricultural, the integration of the solid waste is to be applied. The idea of 3 E's. We must improve the environment, we must improve the energy use, we must make sure it's economic. And to do that, I think we have to transform waste to wealth. And soil carbon is a wealth. In fact, one of the things I like to mention is people grow corn, people grow wheat, people grow soybean. We farm carbon, we farm dairy cattle. We can now grow carbon, we can farm carbon, farming carbon, which means grow carbon in soil and sell it. And selling carbon does not mean you fill up a bag and take it away. Selling means you found out that if you increase carbon soil, there must be some company, like energy producing company, that can trade the carbon credits. And that's the idea of carbon farming. So it has a very economic return, and the return is beyond the money. Money is a very small part. It's the ecosystem services that carbon generates, which is the value that we have to provide. I think I'm coming to the last part which I want to mention, that think about a pyramid. I'm going to go back to the sustainable intensification of agriculture. in which you are farming carbon and creating other ecosystem services. We have started, you have a water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle. You manage all those cycles. The base of this pyramid is soil health, and that soil health is based on its soil organic carbon stock, which unfortunately the soils of Asia, especially of India, are very terribly depleted. They are depleted because we ignore the soil. We take away the crop residue, we want to feed the cattle, we take away the dung, we think soil will just take care of itself. That's not possible. And that's exactly soil are very depleted. So the base of the pyramid, the foundation of everything is soil health, which depends on its soil organic carbon concentration, which is about 1.5%. And then there are 4 sides of the pyramid. One of the sides is food and nutritional security. If your soil is healthy, the food it produces and the nutrition it produces is also healthy. The second side of the pyramid is the climate change adaptation and mitigation. We want to take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, put back into the soil via plant material, which I showed you the picture of George, for example, standing in a field. The soil health of the fruit. So adaptation and mitigation of climate. The third side of the pyramid is the biodiversity. Soil is full of organisms. 8.7 million forms of the organism. And that biomass carbon that you are adding into the soil, the crop residue, the compost, whatever, is a food for those organisms. When you do not put that thing, you are starving those organisms. So the soil is no longer healthy. Soil is a living thing. If you don't feed that living organism, the organism dies. The soil is dead. Or if you put too many pesticides in the soil, soil also dies because those organisms are dead. So the biodiversity is it. And the last part is water quality and renewability. Soil, we call it dirt. Dirt is the best material to purify, denature and filter water. Why our water is polluted? Because our soil is polluted. This is a chain reaction. So that's what leads. Then the question is, how does this, that means I should shut up. I will, in half a minute. The stability of this pyramid depends on the 4 corners where those things join together. And that 4 corners, keeping them together is a glue, otherwise this whole thing is not stable. And that glue consists of governance. I wish the politicians who opened the conference were present when we started talking, but they left immediately after. Because the policy maker has to translate the science into action. And that governance is incentive provided to the landowner, the motivation, the support services to be provided, extension, another. And it is this governance of all that mechanism that gives the stability to the whole thing. So many times people ask, is anybody listening to when you are talking? Of course you are, but you cannot translate science into action. The policy makers have to do it, but they're not here. And we do not know how to communicate with them. And therefore we fail. But the whole idea of conference like this is to bring the knowledge to the general public and to the policy maker, and the policy maker to translate that knowledge into action. So these things go together for the well-being of humanity and for nature purposes. Thank you.